We are so thrilled to have you on board today. So before going any further, we would like to know who you are. Who is Swati Sharma? As an author, as a reader. So we want your brief introduction. Who you are actually.
Okay. If you ask about me, I'm a soul. What I feel, the absolute right answer to your question, that who are you? I think I'm a soul which is eternal, right? Apart from that, in this lifetime, I'm an author, I'm a writer, and I've been a hotelier for whatever little life I've thus lived. And I'm also a content curator, something that I take a lot of deep interest in, and it satiates my creative juices. So that is again, what I'm passionate about. And I'm also a life skills and soft skills trainer.
Okay.
I'm a Landmark graduate, and I've also done advanced Landmark. And presently I'm also heading content with OYO India. I mean, I take care of the content India team.
That is nice.
Yeah. And I'm a human being, just trying to learn my lessons in this lifetime. I hope that whatever the contract that my soul signed up for, I really hope that I learn all my lessons like a good student, and then go away having learned all my lessons and imbibed all my lessons. So yeah, that's me.
It's amazing. So this is your first book, right? The Secret Sauce is You.
Yes.
Congratulations for your first book.
Yes. Thank you.
I've read comments and reviews. It's amazing. Actually, it's amazing. So now we can start for the interview. So my first question, your book, The Secret Sauce is You, depicts that there is no secret hack to get a success in your life. So therefore, how can a person understand that he or she can change their own life, not others?
That's why one of the book title says it all. The secret sauce is you, Jyotsna. Whatever you want to achieve in life, all the ingredients, they lie in you. If you actually recount Bhagavad Gita, that's something I really.
Even I read 30 pages of Bhagavad Gita in English, so not getting there like proper Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, I've read it.
Yes, because it's so deep. It's so deep. Even one shloka, to read one shloka, because I know Sanskrit as well as a language very well. I'm quite proficient in that. Highly proficient, I would say. It has been one of my favorite languages. So when I read it, in one shloka you have to spend at least 5 minutes to grasp it. That okay, what did I just read? It is not you cannot speed read that. Yeah. So yes. So coming back to your question about why the secret sauce is you. If you notice, even when God Himself was with Arjun in Mahabharata.
Yes.
Who actually fought the war? Who actually fought in Mahabharata? It was Arjun or Lord Krishna? Lord Krishna, yes, of course, he was the Sarthi, he was guiding Arjun, but who actually fought it? It was Arjun, right?
You're asking me this question. Yeah, it's Arjun, right?
Yes, it was Arjun who fought
because he was a disciple. Arjun is a disciple of Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna was guiding him, and he was the one who was fighting in a battlefield. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, even Bhagavad Gita teaches us that we may have our tribe, we may have, like my father up there in the heaven, he's my God. While he may keep guiding me, and I may walk on the path he taught me. but ultimately it's me who have to walk the path. Someone can teach you, someone can guide you, someone can show you the door, that's the door for you, you need to open, that's your door of opportunity, but it's you who has to open it. It's you who have to make the effort, get up and actually walk up to the door and open it, and then walk up to your destiny. And if you also look at all these Olympic champions, you think they signed up for it? I mean, if you look at Usain Bolt and all the greatest of the players of our time, and who've been there in the past, how do you think they actually get so much of strength to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, to sleep at 1 a.m. after doing their workout, and do that strenuous exercise, to be so disciplined about their diet? How do you think they are able to achieve that? So all the ingredients that of something that you want to achieve, they lie in you. And Yes, and so the ethos of my book is that if I have to ask you certain questions, Jyotsna, right? So that tell me, who knows your strengths? Who knows?
I know my strengths because nobody knows about me now, because I know myself. Right?
Exactly. You know you. I mean, what is inside of you that only you know you. Like Picasso knew. I mean, you see, our gifts and our destiny is always interlinked. We've got to use your gifts. Like, no one ever came and told me that, okay, Swati, write a book. My dad never told me. My mom never told me. I didn't have to. Picasso, he didn't have to paint, but it is, your gift is something which you cannot live without. Be it people and which amounts to people and the things that we do in a lifetime. If you cannot live without something, and even if I'm not paid a penny, I would still do that passion. Now that's what it is. So all the ingredients lie in you. For instance, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, your lies and sins, your guilt and tears, your regrets and remorse. All of that you know your weaknesses as well. So ultimately, who will find the answer? You will find the answer. The secret sauce is you.
Yeah, the sauce is me. Okay. So
yes. So instead, for instance, when we travel, the GPS navigation is there. Unless you know where you want to go, no GPS can ever take you where you yourself don't know where you want to go.
We have to decide our direction, in which direction we want to go. So because the secret is we, the secret sauce is you. I get it.
Thank you.
So second question. So when people lose their loved ones, right? So it affects their life very profoundly, and we would like to know, how can someone keep going on with life even when some loved ones, and they're just like, yeah, this is it, this is my end point. So how? Just tell me, because your book, it's kind of self-help book, right? And even I watched a video in which you were saying that you have lost your father, and he was the one who is guiding you. He was the one who make you keep going on with your life. So I would like to know your own experience, so that having the giving up thoughts, how would you getting further and further in your life? How?
To be honest, it's really tough. It's, losing a loved one is like losing a part of you. And then imagine living your life without that part. It's, I think, so our heart has 4 chambers. It's like, when I lost my dad, it's like somebody just taking 3 chambers away in a fraction of a second. And imagine just living with 1 chamber of your heart. That's how it feels. That's how it feels to live on without your lifeline. I used to call he was my lifeline. And imagine someone living, like walking, talking without a lifeline.
Yeah.
Who's a human being without a lifeline? You're just dead. You're dead. So I was in shambles. One of the things, Jyotsna, I'd like to tell you today, and which is a fact, and in my book I've also written that, we need to learn to be realist and neither optimist, neither pessimist, but yes.
Be a realistic. Be a realistic person.
Yeah, be a realist. Like, this whole thing, I'm sure in your studies by now you would have come across this equation. Like they ask you whether you see a glass half full or half empty. Remember? Yeah. So what would you say? The glass is half full or half empty?
Actually, I don't remember it because it's been years.
Yeah. So no, if I give you a glass which is half filled with water, so if I ask you that, Jyotsna, do you see a glass half full or half empty? So what will your answer be?
Half empty. My answer is half empty.
Yeah. Okay. So, we often just get confused into half empty and half full. My point is, why can't we simply say that the glass is filled with water?
It has water, right?
Water. I'm saying, why be an optimist and say, oh, the glass is half full or half filled, and and why say that the glass is half empty? Why can't we simply say that the glass is filled with water? It is as simple. Let's be realist now.
So my answer is kind of pessimistic, right?
No. Your answer wasn't it wasn't that of a pessimist, but your answer was what you at this moment in time felt it right. But now if I ask you, now that you are aware of this wisdom, now what will be your answer?
It has water. Glass.
See, beautiful. See, how beautiful. Now that you are aware of a third perspective, of some other connotation also that can be there of this glass, and forever the world has been saying, oh, it is half full or it is half empty. But why can't we just simply say, well, it's filled with water? As simple as that. That's the reality. The fact, the FACT is that it is filled with water. Yeah. So, so basically, so what I was coming from with how to actually deal with losing a loved one is that, you become a realist. You have the greatest reason, I would say, how people learn to actually move on is to accept that the glass is filled with water. I had to accept this reality that he is physically not present.
Yes, with you, yeah.
Yes. The only way you can move on is, sometimes in life, Jyotsna, you don't have a choice. I often say that our life is a sum of choices that we have, but you don't have a choice. So what do I do now? My father, he's suddenly and untimely, his demise just happened, and I have no choice but to accept it. I may be in denial for and people might have different tenures. Someone might not get over it for a lifetime. Someone might take few weeks, months, years. It's different for everyone, and I think we should respect that. But the only way is to act. You are left with no choice. So when you are left with no choice, one fine day you just accept it and
you have to keep going on.
But one of the things I definitely like to tell today, because the second wave of COVID has been devastating for us as Indians, and it is of course devastating across the world. Japan is going through a fourth wave, and Indonesia has now
overtakes India.
Yes, overtakes us. Africa is also now trying to come to terms with it. There is a Lambda variant in UK that is now really seeping in through. So what I can say is that whenever somebody is going through a crisis like that, when you lose a loved one, the first thing is to name that feeling, what you're feeling. Just like कहते हैं ना, नाम तरण संस्कार. When a child is born, the first thing that you do is name that child. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that whenever you are upset, or whenever you've lost a loved one and you're trying to come to terms with it, first let's respect our own feelings. Let us first treat them like our own baby, our baby. Okay. And when you treat them like your own baby, what happens is then you give a name to the baby. Okay.
Right.
Then are you feeling distraught, you feeling dejected or upset, sad, depressed, rejected, remorseful? What is it that you're feeling? You need to ask yourself. Only you can answer that for you. Once you name it, that I am completely distraught. This is the lowest point of my life. I have hit rock bottom.
Okay.
And once you give a name to it, sit with your feelings. Feel what you're feeling. And then if you feel like crying, please cry. We often say that
Let your heart out.
Yes, cry your heart out. We often tell our loved ones, we tell our friends, don't cry, get over it, watch a movie, go for a holiday, watch Netflix, do something you like. No, how? It's your emotions are, this negative emotion which is bottling up inside you need to be released. If you feel like crying, please cry. Because you see, we've got tear ducts in our eyes for a reason. Otherwise, why would God give us tear ducts? Why did He give us eyes, or a liver, or kidneys, or brain and heart and gallbladder and all the organs? Why? You've got to use your tear ducts because it cleanses your soul. You have
even good for eyes too. Cleanse your eyes.
Yeah, it cleanses your eyes. See. So you have to come to terms with what you have to first of all accept your feelings as your baby, and then you have to name them. Once you name them, sit with your feelings and feel what you're feeling. And then I have written in my book that the only way out is in. Whatever you're trying to avoid, the more you avoid, the greater it will become, the greater of a monster or a demon it will become. And it will hound you. It will not go away. The only way it will go away is if you feel what you're feeling.
You have to accept it. Okay.
You have to feel what you're feeling. It's going to be very painful. Right. Imagine what a caterpillar goes through. When it has to become that beautiful butterfly, or what a phoenix goes through. It's like a death that you actually go through. So feel what you're feeling. Cry it out. If you have people around in your house, you don't find a corner, go to the bathroom, switch on the tap.
Just cry.
And cry. If you think, you're going to really bawl and cry, then actually take the towel in your hand, put your face into the towel and cry your lungs out. And you'll feel very light.
You must have done this, right? That is where you're telling us.
I have done this, and I have also done very interesting thing. And they were, there used to be a time when there were people in the house. I would just lash out, take my car keys, get into the car, I live in Gurgaon. I go to the NH8 highway. Go to the highway. And then they say the extra mile has no traffic jams. You come to a point when there is not much traffic, you cry. You don't need a towel or a tap. You can just cry, and there's no one around to see you and to say, okay, hey, there are sometimes people, hey, are you fine? Are you like you can just be yourself. And these days, so now there is a mask on our face.
Yeah,
nobody will come to know.
Who inspired you to write this to choose this genre, and how did you come up with the idea of this book, your book, The Secret Sauces You?
That's a great question. So this genre, I always after my father's death, I wrote this article 10 months after his death. I wrote this article on LinkedIn which is his 7-day journey in the ICU.
Okay.
Because the next day was an off, and it was 15th of August. 14th August, I was sitting and I couldn't sleep. And I just saw on LinkedIn write an article. So I started penning down. So I wrote an article. I wrote an article on LinkedIn, and it was called "Be Hopelessly Hopeful." And my father actually, in my childhood, he gifted me a crazy ball.
Okay.
The crazy ball is that small little rubber ball. And the harder you hit it, the higher it goes up.
Yeah.
And my dad taught me a lesson that in life, whenever you fall down and whenever you are hit hard by circumstances, people, situations, you have to go higher than you were hit.
Okay.
And I think that stayed with me, and that helped me cope up with my father's loss. And so I wrote, and that's what I titled the article on LinkedIn, and I published it on LinkedIn, and then from people from world over, who I didn't know, they got back to me, they wrote to me, they commented, they inboxed me that Swati, we could really relate to your pain, what you have felt. Yeah, they said that we can really relate to your pain, and that's when I somehow I had my moment of epiphany that though I've always loved to write, that I want to write, and it's been a while. Even before my father's death, I think this thing had come to me that I will write a book. I want to write a book, and the genre that was in my mind was, of course, motivational, and I was really irked by the fact that why is failure given an infamous reputation? Because my father, when I was a child, he would push me into participation into a lot of extracurricular activities like Sanskrit station competitions, ballet, a lot of other, house functions, every other extracurricular activities, he would push me. I was a very shy kid, but he would push me, and I would vehement, but he would push me. I started participating, and I started winning. So, winning became a chaska to me early on. And then not only participation was important for me, but winning it was. I wanted to participate just because I wanted to win.
Okay.
Now, so that continued with me, when I lost my dad. And so I knew, my DNA was built like that, or from a very nascent age, I knew that failure is part of winning. And I didn't understand why is failure given such a bad reputation. Yes, like how you so beautifully said, but not many people regard failure as as good. I think failure is good.
This is how facing rejection is nice. You know about what wrong things about you and where you are wrong or where you are right. So I think everybody has to face rejection in order to become something else, and it's a part of your journey, right?
Beautiful, absolutely. In fact, to what you just said, this reminds me, one of the, the second chapter of my book is, about the story with the wasp, that an incident that actually happened with me in real life. However, the entire book is fiction, but there are some parts of it. So, in that I have written to what you just mentioned, Jyotsna. It says that whenever you are, whenever you get rejected, or there is detours, or, there is something that, comes in your path, and you think you can't go ahead, or you have to take a U-turn or something like that, you are actually being guided to the greater good that's in store for you. Now, it can be anything. It can be, that greater good can be just anything in the form of opportunities, people, situations, circumstances, or maybe God is just trying to save you. Maybe just God is trying to save you from someone's malicious intentions or ulterior motives, which we may be, which we may not be aware of. Most of the times we are not aware of what's going on inside someone else's head. Eventually, I wanted to write a book on failure, that failure is such a beautiful thing. So I wrote the skeleton structure. And then one fine day, I started writing it as well. It was panning out to be a non-fiction book.
Oh.
And I was sitting with a friend, and I asked him that, this is what it is. This is what I'm building up. And he said, so what's the storyline? I said, well, there is no storyline. So he said, are you sure? I said, yes. He said, what genre, you want it to be fiction or non-fiction? I said, fiction. No, I said fiction. I said, though I've written in non-fiction. He said, what are you doing? He said, there has to be a storyline.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking in that direction. And a very beautiful story, a fictional story came about that. It started, I conceived the idea, and then it panned out to be such a beautiful story. And then one fine day I was, I'm a runner as well. So I was running. And that day I couldn't go in the morning. So I was running in the evening. I was at night rather. So I was coming back at my place in my condo. And I just thought that, this phrase came to my mind that the secret sauce is you. I was like, what? And
it's sentence, this sentence, it's just came out.
Absolutely. For all this while, actually, maybe it was in my subconscious, I was just thinking that what can be that one word or two words or just a line that will sum up my entire book.
Okay.
And it just popped in. It's like the secret sauce is you. And before this, I changed so many titles, by the way. My mother is aware because she's at the receiving end of all my experiments and all my ideas, and, thanks to her. But then finally, of course, this title came to my mind, which is The Secret Sauce is You. And I froze it. And that's how this genre came about. And second thing about your question about, why did I choose to write this is because, 3 years back, I read this study by World Health Organization that every 40 seconds, one person is committing suicide. And by the way, this was, pre-COVID. God knows if this has become 20 seconds.
You have written this book pre-COVID times, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, when I was, so that's when something struck me and I was deeply moved with it. And it hit me where it hurts the most, because at some point of time, I was also there in my life. And now I'm glad I didn't take that step.
Okay.
And then it struck me that, okay, why you didn't take that step, Swati? And I realized that I didn't take that step because somewhere I think I have stumbled upon the secret sauce of survival at rock bottom.
Okay.
Yes. And then when it dawned upon me, I was like, no, I have to write. This is what I'm going to write. And I have to, it'll be very selfish of me if I die with this, secret sauce in me. It'll be very selfish of me. I have to write it. I have to take it out. And to a point, it became that I couldn't contain it in myself. I'm a very passionate person and I go by my gut always. And I don't care, and I don't give two hoots. When I know I have to do something, I'll do it.
You do
Yes, I do it, and come what may. I mean, if I want to achieve something, I will. And in touch wood, I usually do. The universe also conspires to help me achieve that. And my, of course, dad's and mom's blessings, and my tribe's love. So anyways, and so I then could write it, this book, and then but I wanted to be backed by logic and science. Okay. So for 6 months, I did extensive research into Greek philosophy and psychology. And for 1 year, I wrote it. And for another year, I kept on ruthlessly editing it. And then for 6 months, of course, the publishing stage, everything. And it took about 3 years to write this book.
Yes. Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. So my next question is that your publisher is Invincible Publisher, right? So
Yes.
Why did you choose Invincible Publisher as your publisher?
That's very interesting.
They chose you? What?
I think it was a very mutual thing. I think in life, anything works out only when it's mutual. But the reason I went with the
Mutual decision.
Sorry?
Okay. So it was mutual decision, right?
So, so the reality is, yes, it was a mutual decision. The reality is that I'm a very independent person. And I knew about independent publishing also, and I had done a teen amount of research into traditional publishing versus independent publishing as well. So I knew that there is a route there which brings your craft to the world, and that is independent publishing. So I went ahead with it with Amazon Asia Pacific Holding, and hence I think I published my book. The date says 29 September and also 13 October 2020, and I just went with it. But I learned that for India, since my primary market is India, I'm an Indian. I'm a very proud Indian. And how does my book reach? How does my book reach to my Indian audience? And how does it become easily accessible to it? Because I didn't want to burn a hole in their pockets, because the books are printed in US.
Okay.
So then I thought, okay, I let me look for a traditional publisher. I have my own set of stories. I wouldn't delve into the negative part of it, but the positive part of it. And to answer your question, why I went with Invincible Publishers is because one of the things is that they didn't interfere with my creativity.
Okay.
Yes. And second thing is that the kind of attention and eye for detail and respect they had for the content that I had curated or I have created. Because this was one thing I'm very, very concerned about quality. Very, very concerned. Yes. And by the way, during the initial meetings only I could gauge that I'm going to go with them because of course I was very clear that I will only go with the publisher who will not interfere with my creativity. Exactly. The title will be mine. The rawness of my craft will be mine. And I would not want much of interference with it. Though yes, of course, the editors and the designers, Ajay, publisher, they did have their inputs. And, someone has to really convince me about an idea. So I did buy many ideas. The cover was his idea.
Okay.
Cover that has become quite a hit. I'm a very shy person, and I was quite...
But you have a bold personality. I can
Really?
see that. Yeah.
Thank you. I think my father has been giving me this strength. I mean, because I myself, I'm sometimes surprised the kind of a shy little child, timid child that I was to what I'm turning into. And even before my publishing, I think I was very, very camera shy, extremely camera shy. Yeah. Anyway, so why I went with Invincible? One reason, of course, they didn't interfere with my creativity, and second is the quality. So my book is 6x9 size, which is an international size. We don't have that in India. The quality of the paper, the quality of the printing, Ajay, in fact, if you look at the cover, everything is embossed. The title, subtitle, and my name are embossed on the cover, and. One of most of my readers tell me that what they love about my book is that there are some beautiful illustrations in my book.
Okay.
So I had this idea and I shared it with the publisher. I shared it with Ajay, and he was quite cooperative in understanding where I'm coming from. And the designer worked really, really hard, and she could, I had to tell her what I want. And some of the illustrations are my idea. Like, we were not understanding what do we do when there is a chapter called "The night is the darkest just before the dawn." So they didn't know what to do about it. So I said, just make the entire paper black and just have a half moon there.
Wow.
And and it's looking so beautiful. I can't tell you. And the designer also has come up with some real beautiful illustrations, because the entire book has, just as our heart has 4 chambers, my book Secret Sauce Is You has 4 chambers as well. In fact,
you worked with your father thing, your book.
Absolutely. I think he was the genesis of it. He was the seed of everything that has happened in my life or will happen. Now, of course, he's sitting up there in heavens calling the shots in my life. So yes, the illustrations were extremely beautiful. So why I went with them was the high quality work, and why do you think this happened? Because one of the things which Invincible understood is that how you have, Jyotsna, your own wants and needs in life.
Okay.
Every plant needs different care. We human beings need, every one of us has different wants and needs. We need different care, care or love. And likewise, it's not a one solution for all. Even every author is different. Their craft is different. So they customized everything for me. So that was beautiful, and that's why I went with Invincible Publishers.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So my next question. So as you know, pandemic has devastated everyone's life and it makes our life upside down, right? So how did the pandemic change your life as a writer? Or you had so much fun, because you had a lot of time of reading and all. How?
So I think
Tell your experience as a writer.
So as a writer, Jyotsna, this it didn't upend my life. I'll be honest, I'm a very honest person. So as a writer, this pandemic proved to be a boon for me.
Because you had time, a lot of time, right? You can write, you can read.
Absolutely. So you see, I would say 3 years I was writing it. And then our final months that I got to finally ruthlessly edit it and look for the publisher, etc., was when the pandemic struck. And you see, this pandemic actually graduated me from being a writer to an author. So I am extremely thankful.
Okay.
Yes, this was a beautiful downtime. And I'm somebody who personally, I like a lot of silence and solitude, because I'm also in my profession also, I'm a content curator in learning and development. So we need a lot of silence and solitude to thrive. The great ideas come. Tesla has said this, Einstein, if you look at all the scientists, all the artists of the world, and they need their own space, for creativity to thrive and for them to even breathe. So I got that. And so this pandemic, let me tell you, this I'm extremely thankful to this. Yeah, it changed my life. It changed my life.
It's a good thing that pandemic has affected you in a good way, which is very good.
Everything positive, yes.
Okay. So last question. So what kind of books inspire you as a writer, and who are your favorite authors and poets?
Okay. So what kind of books I like? I like real life stuff. So I'm quite intrigued, motivated, and I look forward to reading anything that's real life. So I'm a very real person and I like real stuff, and of course, the second thing is, you can say autobiographies. And the second thing is hard-earned wisdom, wherein people who've gone out there, they've, they sweat it out, they work hard, and they work and they put in all of them, their heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, remorse, regret, dejections, rejections, and then they pour it in a book. I think that is something which inspires me to pick up a book and read it. And so my favorite writers are, yes, you want to ask something?
Because it's kind of motivational, real stuff, kind of motivational, inspirational. So it gives you some insight of their life. So that their experience, and you will understand that what is life and how to cope with different situations and circumstances. That is amazing that you like real stuff, which is good. So, yeah. So who is your favorite author?
Okay, so my favorite author is, I have few. I like Paulo Coelho. He is a Brazilian writer. Yes.
Even I read The Alchemist.
Oh yeah, see, it's such a beautiful and a cult book, and so I love him. And then I also read Haruki Murakami. He is a Japanese author.
I have read 2 books of him. Men Without Women and The Norwegian Wood. And maybe in future I will read On the Shore. Yeah.
Kafka on the Shore, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You should read it. And one of the books I'll also suggest of Haruki Murakami that you should read is What I Think About
Running. It's a non-fiction.
Yes. That's autobiographical. And since I'm a runner as well, and and a writer as well, I could really relate to it. And trust me, when I read this book, I could literally feel that I'm reading my clone. I could, the kind of why he runs when he has to write also all day, sit on his desk, and I could really I could feel that I'm reading my human clone, a male one.
Okay.
But yeah, he is amazing. He just writes in such a raw. Yeah. So and of course I love Ruskin Bond. He and Ruskin Bond and I share the same birthday, 19th May. In fact, in 2019, pre-pandemic, I was lucky. He and I, we cut our birthday cake together in Landor. So, yes. So that was quite.
It must have been, fan event. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was one of his book launch also. He and I cut the cake together, and suddenly I was like, it was so much of media attention and everything, and he is very used to it. I'm not, and but he was so sweet, and he was very, very congenial, very kind. He's 19th May. All Taurians are very kind and accommodating people, you see. So so that was it. And also there are 3 people who have always inspired me. And their works, and I'm still intrigued, and I'm still going deeper and deeper into it. One is, of course, Carl Jung and the Jungian psychology. Second is Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche is a German philosopher. Yes, he's a German philosopher, writer, composer, and amazing guy. And the third is Sigmund Freud, and he's a Austrian neurologist and a founder of psychoanalysis, which of course Carl Jung delved deeper into it, and Carl Jung of course found Jungian philosophy, psychology. So these are the 3 people I've read a lot, and I love them, and I have almost read everything on them.
Okay.
And I love an author, or a cult figure who's no more. That's Socrates. But Socrates never wrote his word. It was his disciple Aristotle and Plato. So of course Greek philosophy is something which I'm quite intrigued with. So these are my interests.
Yeah, that is why you said you have researched a lot on a Greek philosophies before writing your book.
Yes.
Relate with stuff and all. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's it. And I'm feeling very honored that I take your interview right now. I'm taking an interview, and it was nice talking to you. It was amazing. And most probably about. And at the end, it was a great interview with you. And I'm so happy I took your interview. And you're such a positive person, and I really liked it.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
ma'am. And thank you.